Half of your $1 million penthouse is mine, Serena said, glass-lifted camera light blinking on her phone. I stood by my own marble island, fingers tight around a thick manila envelope. The room laughed. The crystal chandelier trembled. Someone clinked a fork against a flute. I stared at the silver keys on my palm, 2 long cuts of metal, my name etched on a small brass tag. This was my home, not a venue. The caterer's cooler hummed by the balcony door. A stack of place cards lay fanned beside the cake knife. On each card, Serena's name in cursive. On none of them, mine. I am Evelyn, 34. Finance Midtown, the kind of job that keeps you late and pays you in quiet dignity. I bought this place with a decade of early trains and cold dinners, with spreadsheets and silence. It smells like lemons and paper dust, because documents live here, deeds closing, packets, insurance binders, neatly housed in one black folder on the top shelf of a fireproof box. Serena raised her glass higher, the ring light bright as a halo. Family property, she repeated. The room leaned toward the show. Someone filmed. Someone whispered. Someone placed a hand on my elbow like I might faint. I did not faint. I set the manila envelope onto the counter. The flap made a soft, clean thud. I saw the red notary stamp through the paper. I saw the signature curve like a river. My name, not hers. For the record, the party was supposed to be a small engagement dinner. 12 guests, simple flowers, 1 chocolate cake. Serena turned it into a 100-person spectacle. A rental arch, a selfie wall, a neon sign with their initials, and a hashtag printed on coasters. My coffee table looked like a merchandise booth. She sent the Evites from my Wi-Fi printer while I was at work. I found the curled sheets in the paper tray warm and smug. Smile Evelyn, her fiancé, said, sweeping past with a bottle in one hand. His cufflinks flashed. My door camera blinked green. Strangers kept arriving. A string quartet tuned near my bookshelf. A hired planner stuck labels on my pantry. I heard my mother laugh in the hall and say, "It's good that family shares when it matters." She hung her coat on the brass stand I bought during a winter sale when money felt small and the city felt kind. Do you feel the sting already? Good. Tell me where you're watching from and tap subscribe. We need to talk about families and money before this gets worse. I learned long ago to breathe through humiliation. In, out. Count the ridges on the key. Count the stitches on the dish towel. Count the quiet beats between a cruel sentence and the next sip of champagne. People think humiliation is loud. It is not. It is soft. It is linen rubbing your knuckles while you pretend to tidy the counter so you do not throw the cake. Serena clinked her glass again. Evelyn's here thanks to me, she said. Without us, nothing. She smiled with every tooth. The photographer laughed. The flash popped. My living room became a small theater with bad morals and good lighting. My father stood near the bookcase. He adjusted his tie like a nervous usher. He did not meet my eyes. He picked up a coffee table book and set it down again. He likes history. He forgets people. My mother moved between guests with a hostess smile, borrowed from television. She called Serena sweetheart and called me dear, like a cashier says next. On the marble beneath my envelope lay my deed a copy, not the original. I am not foolish. The original sleeps inside the fireproof box behind 2 locks and 1 steel hinge. I ran my finger along the copy's edge. The paper was thick. There was comfort in weight. But what they didn't know was my building has eyes. Small, polite eyes. A dome in the hallway, a pinhole by the door, a discreet little lens tucked above the mantel, because city living teaches you to see without looking. The cameras record to a quiet black unit inside a credenza hum, low light steady. It keeps 30 days of truth. Serena's voice carried. We'll make space for love, she told the planner, pointing at my reading chair. Move this old thing out. She had been in that chair on nights when the city snowed. She had borrowed my throw blanket and cried about an unpaid bill. She had eaten my groceries and promised to pay me back on Friday, the famous day that never arrives. A cousin I hardly know asked, "Is it true? The penthouse is part of the inheritance plan." The cousin held a plate of tiny shrimp and a phone open to a family chat. I saw myself as a sticker in their conversation. Cold eyes, thin mouth, a cartoon of the woman who carried their coats as children. Somewhere in that chat long before tonight, a decision had been made about my walls and floors. They had assigned my rug a future. I said nothing. I arranged napkins, I aligned forks, I straightened a picture frame by a fraction of an inch. The frame is silver. The photograph shows a faraway summer and a small dock. Water remembers every foot that has stepped away from land. I remembered my own step, the one I took when I signed the loan and got the keys. The banker shook my hand. My pen left a dark groove. I cried in a quiet elevator and pressed my forehead to cool glass. Serena's fiancé popped another bottle. Foam kissed the ceiling. Someone clapped. The string quartet slid into a song that sounded expensive. The planner carried a crate toward the bedroom hall. I said, "Easy, that door stays shut." She said, "Client rights," and waved a checklist like a badge. I reached past her and turned the knob myself. The latch clicked. Wood met frame. Sometimes the only power left is a small metal tongue. My phone buzzed. A new email. Subject line, re-residency update. The sender was a surname that rhymed with money. I opened it with my thumb while Serena posed beneath the neon initials. The email spoke in gentle threats, request to modify occupancy records for familial consolidation, suggestion to relieve me of pressure by temporarily relocating during wedding season. My jaw went cold. My mother's name appeared in the thread, polite and complicit. I slid the phone into my pocket, the screen still bright against my palm. A waiter passed with a tray. I did not take anything. The ice bucket sweated onto my table. The water ring spread like a slow bruise. That is how betrayal enters a room, not on a shout, but on a wet circle beneath a glass. I could have shouted. I could have called the building desk and shut the party down. I could have named each cost, insurance, taxes, closing fees, until the air itself felt heavy with arithmetic. Instead, I loosened my fingers and let the envelope rest. I kept my voice low. Low is sharper, low cuts without leaving stains. "Serena," I said. She turned ring light, kissing her cheekbones. "This home is not a stage," I told her. "It is not a prize for whoever speaks loudest near a camera." I picked up one coaster, the hashtag, in gold script, and set it face down. "Don't be dramatic," she said. She touched my shoulder with a hand that had never packed a box or paid a bill. "We're family." Family, in my experience, is a word you can fold and tuck into any pocket. It will change shape to fit the need of the hand that holds it. A chair scraped. Someone coughed. The chandelier hummed. The string quartet paused to retune because even hired grace needs breath. I looked around at the faces. Some were sorry. Most were curious. The curious never help you clean. Here is the line I drew that night. It was not loud. It was not public. It was a line made of small things, keys, hinges, passwords, timestamps on emails that lawyers like to print. I smiled enough to keep the peace. Then I walked down the hall in my own home and pressed 2 buttons on a small black box. The little green light held steady. The world kept recording. I will explain in a moment why that matters. But first, tell me where you're watching from. Subscribe if you believe doors should open with the right keys and not the loudest mouths. This part matters. I returned to the party. I took a breath. I let Serena cut her cake. I let the photographer pose them by my balcony. I let the hashtag shimmer on 100 screens. Quiet is not surrender. Quiet is measurement. The night crept on. The city glittered beyond my glass. Inside, people I loved rearranged my furniture and my fate. I counted my keys again. 1 for the deadbolt, 1 for the box. When the elevator doors finally closed on the last guest, the lobby camera winked. And the house mercifully fell still. When the last of the champagne glasses had been collected, and the neon sign with Serena's initials finally flickered out, I thought perhaps the storm had passed. I was wrong. The storm had only settled into the walls waiting. 2 mornings later, while the scent of stale roses still clung to my apartment, I opened my email before leaving for the office. The subject line struck me like a brass knuckle: occupancy, adjustment, estate consideration. My breath went shallow. The message carried the polite language of bureaucracy, but its meaning was sharp enough to cut. A request to consolidate family residency rights into my deed. A suggestion that I should temporarily vacate to ease wedding preparations. A carbon copy of my mother's name at the bottom. I leaned against the counter keys, digging into my palm. The coffee machine hissed as if it too were angry. There, in black and white, sat proof that my family intended to rewrite ownership, my ownership like it was a grocery list. I replied nothing. Silence is sometimes a sharper weapon than words. But I printed the email, folded it twice, and tucked it behind the original deed in my fireproof box. That box, heavy and dull, had become my only friend. By the time I reached the office, Serena had already begun her theater. Her fiancé had posted photographs on Instagram. Serena, standing beneath my chandelier, captioned, "Our home sweet home. Blessed." The comments poured in. Heart emojis. Congratulations. A few friends asked how she had landed such a stunning penthouse. She replied with a wink emoji. The screen glowed in my hand as I sat at my desk, pretending to study market reports. Colleagues moved about, their shoes tapping tile. I stared at Serena's post until the letters blurred. I could almost hear her laughter from 2 nights earlier echoing against my glass walls. That evening when I returned home, I found Serena's fiancé in my kitchen. He had his sleeves rolled, a cutting board before him, and a bag of groceries on my counter. "Hope you don't mind," he said, knife in hand. "We figured we'd get comfortable before the wedding rush." I asked, though the answer stood right behind him, Serena humming as she unpacked wine glasses from my cabinet. She kissed his cheek and looked at me as if I were the guest. "This place has the space we need," she said. "Family should share." I wanted to shout, to remind them that no contract bore her name, no bank had recognized her signature, no ledger in the city counted her coin. But I only placed my bag down and walked into the bedroom. The lock clicked. I sat on the bed and stared at the deed copy spread across the quilt. But what they didn't know was every corner of this penthouse sees more than eyes admit. The hallway camera blinked at their arrival. The kitchen lens captured Serena's fiancé slipping my wine corkscrew into his pocket as if he owned it. And above the mantel, the small black dome hummed quietly, recording her words. "We'll move Evelyn out for a few weeks. Easy transition." The following Sunday, I met my parents at a quiet cafe. I thought perhaps reason would soften them. My mother stirred her tea with too much sugar. My father polished his glasses with a napkin. I explained the email, the Instagram post, the invasion of my space. I expected concern. Instead, I received a verdict. "Family helps family," my mother said. "Serena is under stress. Be kind." "You can manage, my father," added, sliding his glasses back on. "You're stronger. Let them use the place until after the wedding." I stared at the chipped sugar jar between us. My parents' words were not knives cut clean. Their words were dull stones pressing me into silence. For the first time, I wondered if blood truly bound us or only bruised. Back in the apartment, Serena had filled my refrigerator with champagne and left the door open. Condensation pooled on the floor, seeping into the grout. She greeted me with a smirk. "We had some friends over. You didn't mind, right? Family property." The words struck deeper than the laughter at her party. Family property. She said it as if my years of savings were community funds. As if the 10 winters I worked late to pay each installment were simply a down payment for her amusement. I closed the fridge door. The camera in the hallway blinked green. The email sat safe in my box. My silence held, for now. Because storms do not pass, they gather. And when they finally break, they wash everything away. I am Evelyn, 34, the woman who signs her own checks and sleeps with her deeds near the bed. If Chapter 2 was the drizzle that worms into the ceiling, this is the moment the plaster falls. It did not fall by accident. The first blow came in the family chat. A cousin posted a blurry photograph of my keyring on the marble island, with the caption, "Sharing is caring." Underneath, Serena wrote, "Temporary relocation, while we prep for the big day. Evelyn needs a reset. Doctor's orders. Doctor's orders." I read the words twice, then again, as if repetition could turn the lie into dust. A minute later, my mother tapped a small red heart. My father added a prayer hand. Care looks strange when it wears a costume. Before I could answer, Serena sent a private message that pretended to be kindness. "We're worried about your burnout. You've been unstable. We'll manage the apartment. You rest." I stared at the phrase unstable until it smeared like ink in rain. They were building a narrative brick by brick. If I objected, I'd prove their point. If I stayed quiet, they'd take the silence for consent. Tell me where you're watching from and subscribe. I want you with me when a lie steps into your living room wearing soft shoes. That afternoon, I met my father on a bench near the river, where gulls argue like old men and the wind carries the smell of iron. He spoke softly, as if softness could excuse the knife. "Your mother believes Serena should host pre-wedding events in the penthouse," he said. "It's efficient. It keeps the families together. You could stay at a hotel for a week or two. We'll reimburse." Reimburse. A word that belongs to office stationery and cab receipts, not to a home. What do you think I asked? He took off his glasses and polished them with a handkerchief. He always cleans what he cannot confront. You're strong, he said. Serena is delicate. Delicate. The same word they used when she failed a class, when she quit a job, when she borrowed money and returned only smiles. I looked at the water. It did what water always does, moved forward unbothered by human sentences. But what they didn't know was I had already pulled server logs from the little black recorder in my credenza. It timestamps every arrival, every voice, every false kindness. I saved the clips to an external drive the size of a deck of cards and labeled the folder with one quiet word: proof. The second blow arrived as an email from a clinic I had never visited. The subject line read, "Follow up on consultation." Inside a gentle summary, supposedly written after my recent evaluation for acute stress, recommending time away from triggering environments. A clinic logo at the top, a digital signature at the bottom, a diagnosis in the middle that did not belong to me. At first glance, it looked official. At second, I saw the error. They misspelled my middle name, swapped a letter in my street. Counterfeits betray themselves. That is their curse. I printed the note, circled the errors with a blue pen, and slid it behind the copy of my deed. The fireproof box swallowed it with a dull click. I kept the original safe, where steel respects truth. That evening, I returned to find Serena in my hallway with a rolling rack of dresses. Sequins flashed like fish scales. Good news, she chirped. The rehearsal dinner is here next Friday. We need the space for fittings and wine deliveries. Be a darling and spend a few nights at a hotel. I'll send you a link. She waved her phone, her ring light glowed, her smile was a billboard. This is not a hotel, I said. My voice was even. Evenness is a kind of weapon. She tilted her head. You're making this hard. Think of family reputation. Imagine the posts. Gracious cousin offers penthouse to support love. Doesn't that sound better than whatever you're planning? Behind her, her fiancé opened my sideboard and palmed a set of antique dessert forks like a tourist picking up shells. My hallway camera watched. The kitchen lens watched. The small dome above the mantel watched and hummed and remembered. I held out my hand. Keys, I said. She laughed. To my place, the hand with the phone did not move. The other hand touched the pocket of her silk jacket. The pocket bulged with a familiar brass shape. The plan had layers, the way all theater needs props. On Wednesday, boxes appeared at my door labeled with Serena's maiden name. A courier brought a refrigerated crate of white peonies and slipped it into my kitchen like he was returning a borrowed sweater. A tent company called to confirm measurements for a balcony covering. When I told them no, the foreman chuckled. Bride said you'd be difficult. I thought about humiliation and how it doesn't scream. It taps and taps and taps until your hearing goes out. I brewed coffee and let it go cold while I drafted a single text to the family group. No one hosts events in my home without my written consent. No one moves in. Period. Then I put my phone face down and listened to the room. The apartment sounded like a waiting animal. The replies arrived in a flurry. My mother. Don't be harsh. A cousin, a bouncing heart. Serena, a paragraph about community and sacrifice, the kind of paragraph people write when they want your things but not your company. Then came the line that told me how far they were willing to go. If you don't comply, we'll initiate a wellness check. It's for your own good. A wellness check is one of those modern levers that looks like care but operates like force. You can weaponize anything if you say it sweetly. I turned on the television for noise and caught Serena on a live stream hair perfect voice soft. Pray for my cousin, she told her followers. She's under such pressure. We're stepping in until she's stable. Comments stacked like dominoes. Sympathy emojis. New followers. The algorithm loves a sacrificial lamb. I shut the screen and opened my box. The keys felt heavy in my palm. The external drive tucked inside my jacket like a heartbeat. I pulled a legal pad from the drawer and wrote dates. I wrote times. I wrote what each camera saw. Line after line, the quiet ledger of a woman who knows that truth needs not volume but order. I slept with the bedroom door locked and my phone on airplane mode. At dawn, the planner tried the handle again and sent an apologetic text about just measuring. At noon, the building manager called to check on an unusual number of deliveries. I thanked him and asked him to log every box. At 4, my email pinged with another forwarded clinic note, this time using my middle name correctly, but addressing me as Miss Serena. Counterfeits improve, they never perfect. By evening, the family chat had cooled into a smug quiet. That is when the third blow landed a screen recording of my supposed late-night messages to Serena begging to sleep on her couch because I couldn't stand the apartment's energy. The timestamps matched moments when I had been on the phone with a client. The language sounded almost like me, short, precise, weary. Almost. The forgery was good. It was not good enough. In one sentence, the writer used a semicolon correctly. Serena writes them like eyebrows. I printed the fake thread and laid it beside the email and the clinic notes. The evidence formed a patient little staircase. At the top of that staircase stood a door I had not opened yet. Behind it waited the part of me that does not negotiate. But I was not ready to kick yet. A clean strike needs a still target. So I cleaned. I folded blankets. I inventoried the silver. I placed the rolling rack by the door and texted Serena, "Your dresses are ready for pickup." She replied with a laughing face. Laughter is brave until it runs into paper. Before midnight, I opened the small black box in the credenza, copied 3 clips to the drive, and renamed them with quiet, sturdy words: hallway, keys, kitchen, claim, balcony, blessed. Then I wrote one sentence in my notebook: they think the cameras watch for thieves. They do not know the thieves live inside. If you think this is the worst of it, it is not. The worst has a sound you will recognize when you hear it. Stay with me, we are almost at the hinge. I will tell it straight. Betrayal has a sound, and in my apartment it sounded like crystal glasses clinking over my own table. By then, Serena had claimed every corner of my space. Shoes at the door, dresses hanging in the closet, photographs of her and her fiancé taped to my fridge as if the life inside these walls had always been theirs. The rehearsal dinner was the turning point. I did not agree to host it. I returned from work to find rental chairs lined up across my living room, a catering crew unpacking trays on my counter, and a rented arch of white roses pressed against my balcony doors. A stranger asked me to step aside while he hammered a stand into my hardwood floor. My jaw tightened, my breath sat heavy in my chest. "Smile, Evelyn," Serena sang, walking past in a gown the color of champagne. She held a glass in one hand, her phone in the other, and spoke to a live audience of hundreds. "We're so blessed to celebrate in our home." Our home! She said it with confidence, as if words alone could rewrite deeds. Guests nodded, clapped, and posted. My name disappeared with each tag. I found my father in the corner chewing quietly, not daring to meet my eyes. My mother floated through the crowd with a hostess's smile, collecting compliments that were not hers. Cousins I had not seen in years posed beneath the arch and captioned it, "Family Unity." I poured myself a glass of water, clear and cold. The condensation slipped down the stem, wetting my fingers. That glass was the only thing that belonged to me in the room. Serena clinked a fork against her flute and announced, "Without family there is nothing. Without me, Evelyn would be lost." Laughter followed, phones lifted, the room shimmered with approval. I placed my glass down on the marble, the ring of water spreading like truth across stone. I looked at Serena and said nothing. Silence has weight, silence bruises. But what they didn't know was, every second had been recorded. The kitchen camera blinked above the cabinets. The hallway dome captured each arrival. The mantle lens tracked her as she raised her glass and declared ownership of what was never hers. Later that evening, while the last guest staggered out and the catering crew scraped plates into bins, Serena approached me with a smirk. "Be reasonable," she said. "After the wedding, you can have a corner. Until then, play nice." She touched my shoulder as if to soften the cruelty, but her hand was cold. I stepped back. In that moment, I understood she did not want peace. She wanted surrender. I excused myself, walked into the bedroom, and locked the door. From a drawer, I pulled a small black USB drive and slid it into my pocket. Then I opened the box. Inside lay the deed copy stamped and signed the weight of 10 years of savings and sacrifice. Next to it, the printed emails and forged clinic notes. I stacked them neatly, one atop another evidence, forming a patient tower. At the top, I placed a note written in my hand. "This ends on my terms." The next day, Serena posted a video tour of the penthouse, calling it the first chapter of our forever home. The clip went viral among her friends, who praised her taste. None of them knew the furniture had been mine, the mortgage mine, the lonely nights of work mine. But the internet does not ask for proof. It accepts beauty as fact. I knew then the confrontation was no longer private. It had spilled into feeds, timelines, hashtags. My humiliation was public property, which meant the revenge when it came would be public too. If the rehearsal dinner was a wound, the week that followed was salt poured deep into it. By then, Serena had grown bold, careless even. People who steal often forget the weight of silence. They mistake my quiet for defeat. It began with a text sent not to her fiancé, but to the wrong group chat. My phone lit up at dawn. The message read, "We'll kick Evelyn out completely. Easy million." A wink emoji followed. She had meant it for him, but it landed in the family thread where cousins, aunts, and uncles all watched the words flicker across their screens. She deleted it in under a minute. Too late. Screenshots move faster than regret. I saved that screenshot. I saved everything. The cameras had been rolling when she said nearly the same line aloud in my kitchen hand curled around my corkscrew like it belonged to her. I labeled the file neatly, "Kitchen claimed." But what they didn't know was, I had help. A friend from college now, an IT specialist, restored the fragments of her deleted texts. He handed me a folder, the blue light of his monitor cold against his face. "She's digging her own grave," he said. I only nodded. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted precision. By Friday, Serena's wedding planner had arrived with contracts in hand. She tapped the counter with red nails. "We need this space for staging. Bride's request." She slid a paper toward me already signed by Serena and witnessed by my mother. At the bottom, a line waited for my name. I picked up a pen, uncapped it, and let the silence stretch. I placed the nib against the line, then set it down again without a mark. "No," I said. "Just that." The planner frowned, gathered her folders, and left without another word. That evening, the family gathered in my apartment for what they called a civil discussion. The air was heavy with perfume and expectation. My mother's first words, "Why can't you just be generous? This is family." My father polished his glasses and said nothing as always. Serena sat tall in a white dress and declared, "Without us, you're nothing." I looked at each of them in turn. My fingers brushed the small drive in my pocket. It felt like a pulse, steady waiting. Humiliation tastes metallic. You hold it on your tongue until your mouth is full of iron. I swallowed it for the last time that night. The next morning, I carried the drive to my lawyer. A tall man with silver hair, he clicked play without comment. We watched Serena lift a glass and say, "I'll kick Evelyn out and claim the place." Easy money. We watched her fiancé pocket my silver forks. We watched her post to her followers calling it our forever home. The lawyer leaned back. "When you release this, there will be no going back. Are you ready?" I nodded. Revenge, like paperwork, requires signatures. By Sunday evening, the clip was online. Not through me directly, but through an anonymous account, the way storms sometimes break from a hidden sky. TikTok carried it first. Within hours, 1 million views. By dawn, 3 million. The comments rolled in like thunder. "Imagine stealing your cousin's house." "Bridezilla in real life." "Cancel the wedding." Her sponsors pulled out. The boutique refused to loan her gown. And her fiancé, poor man with expensive taste, walked out 2 nights before the ceremony, citing irreconcilable ethics. The family chat went silent. Not a single cousin typed. My mother called once, then again, but I let the phone ring out. On my balcony, I watched the city flicker while the world watched Serena unravel. Humiliation had shifted. It no longer lived in my chest. It belonged to her broadcast for strangers to pick apart. And I learned something that week: truth does not whisper. Truth waits, then it roars. I will not pretend I didn't enjoy the silence that followed the storm. For weeks, Serena had filled my home with noise, her voice, her guests, her laughter echoing off glass. Now it was quiet. Too quiet for her taste, I imagine, because quiet leaves room for shame. The clip kept spreading. Morning talk shows picked it up, slotting it between segments about elections and weather. Hosts shook their heads, smirked and repeated her words. "I'll kick Evelyn out and claim the place." Easy money. The phrase became a meme. Teenagers lip-synced to it. Strangers argued in comment sections about entitlement, about inheritance, about family greed. Serena tried damage control. She posted a tearful video from what looked like a hotel bathroom makeup, smudged voice trembling. "It was a misunderstanding," she said. "I love my cousin. We were joking." The internet does not forgive easily. They replayed her clip beside the security footage, laughing at the word joking. Her sponsors cut ties. The wedding venue canceled. By the end of the week, the fiancé was gone. "He didn't sign up for scandal," someone whispered. and whispers grow teeth. But what they didn't know was, I wasn't finished. You see, I had not only the clip but the paper trail forged clinic notes, fake text threads, that email suggesting I vacate my own home. I bundled them neatly into a file and slid it across my lawyer's desk. He read in silence, tapping his pen against the margin. Finally, he said, "This isn't just gossip anymore. This is attempted fraud." I let that sentence hang in the air. Fraud. A word colder than betrayal, heavier than shame. It carried weight in courtrooms, in banks, in places where signatures matter. The next family gathering came sooner than I expected, a half-hearted attempt to clear the air. They met in my mother's living room, not mine. Serena was no longer welcome inside the penthouse. I walked in holding a slim folder, the kind that creaks when you bend it. Inside every piece of evidence. My mother began with a plea. "Can't you forgive? She's young. She made mistakes." My father muttered about family bonds. Serena sat stiff eyes, swollen pride, still clinging to her like a wet coat. I opened the folder and laid each page on the coffee table. The fake clinic note, the forged messages, the screenshots of her deleted text. Easy million. My voice was steady. This is not youth. This is theft. No one spoke. The only sound was the hum of the old ceiling fan. I stood, gathered my papers, and said, "I don't need apologies. I need distance." Then I left them staring at the empty table where truth had been spread like cold supper. By Monday, legal letters were in motion. By Tuesday, Serena's name was whispered not as bride, not as cousin, but as cautionary tale. And by Friday, I unlocked my apartment to find it empty of her scent, her clothes, her chaos. Just me, my keys, my box of documents, and the steady hum of the recorder. Tell me, have you ever tasted justice? It is not sweet, it is not bitter. It is metallic like a key between your teeth. I woke one morning and realized the apartment finally sounded like mine again. No heels clattering across the hardwood, no strangers laughing under my chandelier, no camera flashes turning my walls into theater backdrops. Just the hum of the refrigerator, the soft buzz of the city beyond glass. Quiet, honest, quiet. The legal process moved faster than I expected. My lawyer called, with a voice like polished stone, the forged clinic, note the false text threads, the wellness check threats, each one documented, time-stamped, and undeniable. He said words that steadied me. The property is indisputably yours. No one can challenge it now. Serena did not come to court. Her attorney muttered something about emotional stress and public backlash. I almost pitied her. Almost. But pity is wasted on those who mistake cruelty for cleverness. My parents stopped calling. I suppose silence was easier than apology. In our family, pride has always been thicker than blood. They could not bear to look at me and see the cost of their favoritism written in headlines. I still remember the day the ruling arrived. A simple envelope, white with the court seal pressed into the corner. I slid it open with a letter knife, the paper crackling like a dry leaf. One page inside, stamped and signed, declaring what I had known all along this home was mine. Not half, not borrowed, not family property. Mine. I sat at the kitchen counter, envelope in one hand, glass of water in the other, and felt a calm I had not known in months. I did not cheer. I did not call anyone. I simply breathed, letting the truth settle into my bones. But what they didn't know was, peace is also a kind of revenge. To wake each morning and walk across a floor no one else can claim. To sip coffee without fearing intrusion. To know the locks click only for you. That is victory. News traveled without my help. The clip continued to circulate, now framed as a lesson in entitlement. Commentators called it the viral downfall of a would-be heiress. Serena became a cautionary hashtag. Even weeks later, strangers sent me messages, some praising my patience, others sharing their own stories of family betrayal. The internet has a long memory for humiliation. One evening, my mother appeared at my door, her face-lined eyes tired. She carried no bag, no gift, only a faint smell of lavender soap. "We didn't handle things right," she whispered. I let her words hang between us like damp laundry. Then I closed the door gently. Not slammed, not locked, just closed. Some boundaries are quiet. My father never came. Perhaps it was easier for him to polish his glasses than to face what he had ignored. As for Serena, I hear she left the city. A cousin mentioned she was starting fresh somewhere down south. Fresh starts sound noble, but I know better. You cannot start fresh when the world remembers your worst sentence. Easy million will follow her like an unwanted shadow. The apartment remains mine, but I keep the cameras on. Not out of fear anymore, but as habit. Evidence comforts me. Truth captured in pixels and stored in silence, it is the only inheritance worth trusting. So here I sit, deed locked in my box, keys warm in my hand, city lights reflected on my glass. Family taught me many things, though not in the way they intended. They taught me that silence cuts deeper than words, that loyalty can be forged as easily as signatures, and that revenge does not always roar. It sometimes just closes a door. Nights in this city are never fully dark. Even at 3 in the morning, light seeps through blinds, red from brake lights, white from street lamps, blue from screens in other windows. I sit by mine deed in hand, and let the glow remind me that I am not invisible anymore. The penthouse is whole again. The chairs I bought one at a time still line the table. The rug I chose during a lonely winter anchors the living room. The photographs are mine now. No strangers smiling under my chandelier. No borrowed faces taped to the fridge. The air smells of lemon polish and paper dust. My home, entirely. I think back to that night when Serena lifted her glass and said, "Half of your $1 million apartment is mine." She thought humiliation would silence me. She thought family pressure would bend me. She forgot that paper remembers cameras, silence remembers. There is a difference between losing and choosing not to fight yet. I did not lose. I measured, waited, collected. Revenge was not a scream, it was a ledger balanced line by line. My parents no longer visit. Their silence is both punishment and mercy. Sometimes I wonder if they replay Serena's downfall in their minds, if they recognize how their favoritism grew teeth and bit them. But I no longer wait for their recognition. Some debts remain unpaid. Serena. She lives far from here now. The internet still remembers her phrase, "easy million." Children chant it on playgrounds. Teenagers turn it into remixes. News outlets replay it whenever a story about greed needs illustration. She cannot escape it. Her laughter has become her legacy. And me, I wake early, make coffee, and sit by the window with the city stretching below. I work my numbers, plan my days, lock my doors at night. I live simply. I live freely. That is enough. But what they didn't know was the greatest revenge is not the viral clip, not the canceled wedding, not the silence of relatives. The greatest revenge is peace. To live in the very space they tried to take unbothered, unashamed, untouched. I trace the brass tag on my keys. 2 cuts of metal, cold and steady. My name etched deep. Proof that some things once earned cannot be stolen. So, if you think I made the right move, comment right. If you would handle betrayal differently, share your way below. Because in families, money may expose the truth faster than words, but how you respond, that writes the ending.